Blau und Weiß ein Leben lang. Hello, meine Leute. Willkommen zu das einzige Schalke podcast. Auf English. That's right, folks. Officially the world's only English language Schalke podcast. This is SchalkeMerica. I am not Richard Carmen. My name is Jack Mangan. Richard Carmen picked up a knock just the other day, trying to get him back to match fitness. Hopefully he's able to recover by the time we are ready to talk about the upcoming match with Bayern this weekend. But in his absence, I have brought on a very specific guest. And I've done that for this reason. The last time we had a podcast, Matthew Hoppe had just scored a hat trick. He was very much a one-hit wonder at that point, and we were wondering, is it sustainable? Can it happen again? Right? That's what the conversation was. But then he goes out in the next match, scores again today, 3 in a row. The happening is well and truly upon us, and so I bring in a man now whose record of fervent enthusiasm for Americans at Schalke is storied and unimpeachable, will be known to some of you in the Schalke Twitterverse. It is Ethan at Tedesco time. Welcome to the program. Your second cap.
Yeah, it's been a while since the last one.
How are things going for you down in the American South?
It's good. It's good. It's getting, we're a little bit better off weather-wise than you guys up there.
That is that is certainly true. Very much in the depth of January. Chicago winter is pretty nasty. Not fun at all. So before we get into the Frankfurt game briefly and then talk about Cologne and some other things, Matthew Hoppe, real quick, we're going to do it. We're going to do it because you're here. But, okay, what is your opinion on what we've seen from this young man so far? Scored in 3 consecutive. Do you still think it's entirely fluky? Do you like some of the things you're seeing from him? What's your appraisal of him as a player at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, you can tell that, like, some of his movement's pretty good. I like the way he moves off the ball most of the time. I think his link-up play is a little bit short of where you'd want it to be. It seems like he's more like that poacher type that you're looking for. But I think honestly it's just like a little bit of confidence, and that's what we don't have in the rest of the squad. So, if you've got one player who has a little bit of confidence coming off of a couple of good games, they're just gonna perform way better than everyone else. They're gonna stand out.
Do you think that confidence is a product of the fact that he was only fairly recently introduced to the entire first team environment and atmosphere, which very well may be healthier than it is, at the Knappishmühle level? Something I like about young players sometimes, especially strikers, is it seems as though they don't have as many bad habits. Like, they come in and they're very single-minded, and they tend to think, they don't like think themselves out of situations. They just act a little bit more. Certainly seems like that's been happening with him so far. Do you think that's a contributing factor at all?
I mean, it could be, but more or less, I think, you get in there, and for young players especially, coaches don't really want to like push the envelope too much. So they'll just sort of, loosely say what they want from them. So I feel like, the less instructions you give maybe sort of eases the expectations. You come in, I know you've been on the Katuchu train for way too long.
Way too long. Oh, no.
So, but, I feel like Katuchu, we kind of expect a lot more from him than maybe Hoppe when he comes in, and Hoppe does something like this. We're all like completely gassed about it. But for Katuchu, it's sort of been like that slow introduction into the first team where he like gets the like expectations layered on him maybe.
I do want to take a moment because the chat is blowing up. It seems as we have attracted some perhaps viewers we don't typically attract because of our esteemed guest today. Look at this. Is that the Tedesco time? Of course, famous Renee here. Look at this cutie, the elusive Ethan. I mean, the fan club is well and truly popping off at the moment. Love that. Hey, everybody in the chat, thanks for listening and contributing. Send your questions at any point if you want us to address something that you'd like us to talk about. But let's move on for the moment to the game immediately following when we ended that winless streak. We went over and played Frankfurt on the road. Frankfurt maybe not reaching the heights this season that they have in recent seasons at times, but certainly a capable squad, kind of mid-table at the moment. Let's get into the lineups for that one. It was very much still kind of the same. I think, have we had the same system like 3 weeks in a row now, almost the same team selection too?
Yeah, I think the only change was Rahman in for Shep for Frankfurt. Yeah. I think that was the one change.
Yeah, so Ralph Fairman in goal, back four of Ziyad Kolasinac, Matija Nastasic, Ozan Kabak, Timo Becker at right back once again. Amina Harid out left, Suat Serdar, Benjamin Stambouli central, Benito Raman out right, and then Matthew Hoppe and Markut up top. What have you been making of Timo Becker's time at right back recently? We had seen Kylian Ludwig earlier in the season, followed by Stambouli sliding over there, which I was like kind of okay with at times. And now he's moved back into the middle under Christian Gross. We've been seeing Timo Becker get back in the squad. What have you made of him?
I mean, I feel like this is sort of a backhanded compliment, but for Becker, like the less you notice him, sort of the better. If I'm not noticing him doing anything in particular, it sort of feels a little bit safer. I mean, with Ludovic, when he was in the squad, there had one or two moments every game where you'd be like, oh, there goes Ludovic again, and nothing of his fault, of course, but I feel like he got thrown into a very difficult situation. But with Becker, I mean, he's just there. And that's the most I can say about him. I don't think he's doing bad. I don't think he's doing well, but average is very, I guess, a positive thing right now with Schalke's current performance.
Yeah, I feel like that's very much been I don't want to speak for Richard, but I feel like that's kind of been our take so far as well, which is especially in a season where the defense is struggling as much as it is in this one. If you have a guy that comes in and just doesn't really get noticed, that's probably a good thing, because more often than not, they're getting noticed for the wrong reasons, which is, various individual mistakes, all kinds of stuff. So yeah, I would agree. I think he's been steady. I think he doesn't offer the most going forward. I haven't been, that thrilled with his. I actually think Kylian Ludwig's service sometimes from distance on crosses was halfway decent. I haven't looked at the stats. Maybe you have a different opinion on that, but I feel like Timo Becker struggled there a little bit. But luckily we have, Ziyad Kolasinac now coming in on the left-hand side. That's helping us get some of that width from that position, although on the other side of the field. This match against Frankfurt, they came out and they looked like they just ran at us immediately. Like, wasted no time. We're going to sprint at you. We're going to put you under pressure, try to make something happen early on. First, especially 15 minutes of this one, I'm surprised we didn't concede even that early. Started to regain a little bit of a foothold, and then there's a series of set pieces and corners where we're just really struggling to actually clear the ball. And you felt like, God, if we keep giving them, one of these is going to go in eventually. Finally, and I forget what minute this was, maybe around the 28th minute, corner comes in, Ralph Fairman comes out, is unable to grab it and really deal with it, and sort of punches it out to the side. I forget who plays the ball in, but ball lofted to the back post. No one picks him up. Headed to Benjamin Stambouli, who is marking the near post, and somehow gets caught like flat-footed or like with his weight shifted back and fails to clear the ball, even though he like kind of makes contact with it. 1-0, just the most typical Schalke goal you can possibly concede based on everything that's been going on this season. What were your thoughts on this one, and then the match at that moment in time?
Yeah, I mean, actually, wait, that was the Köln game. That was the one we just saw, unfortunately.
Shows what I know. Yeah, there you go. I'm already forgetting what I'm talking about. The goal I was actually thinking of, the first Frankfurt. Yeah, let's go back to that one in about like 20 minutes, maybe. You can see the hosting duties already kicking off well. The goal I was actually thinking of, the first Frankfurt goal, Kabak.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Really poor defending in the center. Just gets totally sent the wrong way, loses man. Not the kind of goal that you would hope to see conceded from a guy that is being linked to Liverpool, is being linked to big clubs in terms of a potential summer transfer. So let's ask this question then. What have you made of his performances recently, and what did you make of that goal specifically?
Yeah, I mean, Kabak, probably since he had the ban for 5 matches, I feel like he's come in and it's sort of like, I guess the ban sort of, layered on another layer of pressure, because it seemed like, at the start of the season before that, it was kind of shaky. I mean, the whole defense was shaky. But, I mean, after that, it's sort of, it just seems like sometimes he's completely lost it. Like, I like moments and lapse of concentration that you didn't used to see last year. And, it's concerning for sure.
Yeah, I mean, played really well for Stuttgart despite their relegation, and then his first season under Schalke I think was very good. And yeah, like you said, it's frustrating because I think both Salif Sane, who hopefully is back to match fitness shortly, I forget exactly what the state of his injury is, but both him and Ozan Kabak, you look at those two guys specifically, and you're like, that should be a great center back pairing. Or at least a solid, maybe above, like at least above average for the Bundesliga level. And it just hasn't been that enough. And I mean, Nastasic has been in there a lot, Stambouli at times this season as well. So there's a lot of like changing center back pairings and partnerships, but it just seems like neither of them are working. And the guy that's been pretty consistent and constant in there is Kabak, and he hasn't been living up to it either. I thought Schalke responded well to this goal. Well, obviously because we scored a minute later, but I thought like, the play after that as well. Like we got right back on the front, tied it up. So 1 minute after this goal goes in, I believe it's a throw in that is lofted over the top, and
it was back to Stambouli, and Stambouli chipped it forward. Yeah,
there you go. Chipped over the top. I believe the defender thought the keeper was going to come for it, and the keeper thought the same thing of the defender. Should have gotten nowhere near Matthew Hoppe on that play, but he makes the effort, tracks it down, and ultimately hits it and makes the keeper 1-1, his second consecutive game with a goal. What a play that was, Ethan.
I guess fortune favors the bold. He kept, pushing the back line, sort of forced, I guess you could say he forced Hinteregger into that mistake, but I mean, that'd be a little bit generous to give that to him. But, I guess sort of one of those youthful sort of characteristics of him is, just the willingness to just keep running.
Yeah.
I feel like for most strikers, you would see that and it's like, oh, well, this goalkeeper has it. I won't track that down. And for Hoppe, I mean, one way or another, he's going to chase down the ball. And, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And it paid off for him that time.
It certainly did. Here's a proposed back four. Imagine that at the start of the season, thinking that is the back four that Schalke would be considering at this point in January. I certainly wouldn't have predicted that at all. But Schalke really got back into this one, and we weren't producing the chances. We weren't actually nothing we were doing was resulting in a lot of shots. But I thought for much of the next 30 minutes of this match, at least up until Frankfurt ultimately scored again, kind of in it. I mean, it was back and forth. They were getting more shots in, but we weren't getting overrun to the extent that we were early on in this match. But then the tide is shifted by the introduction of one Luka Jovic, who is back at Frankfurt. When this got announced, I said on Twitter, can we wait until after Sunday for this man to make this move? But that was not to be, and unfortunately we contributed to quite a poetic return in the 72nd minute. I believe it's a counterattack wide, down the left-hand side. Ultimately, Luka Jovic just makes a very nonchalant run to the center of the box. No one picks him up, played right in, and a striker of his quality is gonna finish that every time, isn't he, Ethan?
Yeah, and I feel like it's a little bit unfortunate that Frankfurt got their Jovic deal in before we got Huntelaar, who we'll talk about later. It feels like just a bit of a cheating scandal going on. Feels like, Jovic is a game changer for Frankfurt, and, we were sort of, like you said, we were sort of in the game. Frankfurt really weren't creating too many great chances, but, I mean, once Jovic comes on, you only need to give him one chance before he scores.
Yeah, absolutely. And then 20 minutes later, I think it was actually in stoppage time, despite a couple chances potentially to even this thing up and find a way to get something out of this match, in stoppage time, throwing everything forward, they once again come down the pitch. Luka Jovic kind of does Ozan Kabak, unfortunately, and really nice finish. I'm slightly less critical of Kabak on that one just because I think it's a really nice move from Luka Jovic and a smart finish. But, I mean, that's the quality player we're dealing with here.
Yeah, and, running at the tired legs, you could tell that, it was 2-1 up until that point. So, it just felt like the defense was sort of half-heartedly still trying to keep us in the game. And, I mean, once Jovic gets one-on-one, it's sort of, that's game over. Absolutely.
So, unfortunately, the revelry following the end of that winless streak short-lived as we go to Frankfurt and succumb to defeat over there. But the next match, of course, which could take place today, was against Cologne. And despite Cologne being a bogey team for Schalke, kind of a weird bogey team to have, honestly, sort of random. But despite that, slightly more optimistic that we could find form somewhat similar to what we saw in Hoffenheim, and that would be enough to overcome a team like Cologne that is also struggling. Unfortunately, that was not to be either. 2-1 defeat to Cologne today. Let's get into the lineups once again on this one. Exact same back four as previously. Once again, Serdar and Stambouli central. I mean, I think the only thing that would change is, did you see this one more as a 4-2-3-1 as opposed to a 4-4-2? It kind of just changes depending on the phase of the game. Basically the same lineup, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think that we would see it more as like a 4-2-3-1 with Oot dropping deeper, but that was more just because we had the ball. You know, we play like the 4-4-2 against the ball, sort of pressing against the back line for Oot. But I mean, we had more of the ball this game, so we sort of saw Oot dropping deeper into that role more often.
Yeah, and I guess the thing that I find interesting about Christian Gross's commitment to this group of players early in the season here is that it's not entirely like the most experienced players that are getting the looks. It's actually a decent mix. And so that, and the lack of rotation is like, are these people that are just consistently doing better in training? What's going on here? That's kind of like one of the questions I guess I would have going forward is like why the lack of opportunities for some other people. But and actually, let's talk about that for a second. Let's get your opinions because on the free Katusha movie real quick. Bozdogan Katusha, do you think they should be getting more minutes? If not, why not? And like, are you fine with how things are going in terms of who's getting the starting nods most weeks?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, like if you just look at the left side of our team with Kolasinac and Harit, I think that feels like, you know, the left side feels fine to me, the way that Serdar sort of links up with those two. And then you look at the right hand side in this game, against Cologne. It's sort of like the right hand side was sort of, not there. Like Raman's a great wide poacher if you can get him deliveries into the box. But I mean, Becker doesn't offer much going forward. Stambouli more, a hybrid center back defensive midfielder. So it felt like, the whole game we were trying to force it down the left side. So, I mean, if we bring in maybe Bozdogan and try to sort of get him off that right side onto his left foot, I mean, I don't see how that could be any worse than just completely avoiding one side of the whole pitch.
I think that's a good point you make about Benito Raman, but it's something that's interesting about him too, is we just can't get anybody, it seems like almost, who can perform consistently. There's certain periods of the season where it's like Mark Oud is really carrying us right now. Even if the goals aren't always there, his work rate, the way he's involved on the pitch, he's the guy. And then there's times like, Benito Raman puts in a really couple good games. And you're like, is he finally going to get it going and consistently be a threat for us offensively? And they can't keep it going for more than 2 to 3 games apiece. Benito Raman, the last 2 appearances, I don't think has been particularly good, unfortunately, or like as good as he is at certain times. So that's a little bit frustrating to me. But let's get into this one. What did you make to how we came out of the blocks in the start of this game, Ethan?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like Cologne was sort of just giving us the ball. Like, I mean, the way they came out, they sort of, pulled everyone back and said basically break us down if you can. And I mean, unfortunately, like we saw later in the first half, like we couldn't basically, and they caught us out. And from one of those dastardly set pieces that we always hate to see.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there was some like ball pressure on our center backs, but no like hardcore pressing that you really saw at any point. And yeah, as you said, very much sitting back, letting us come onto them and looking for counterattacking opportunities, which I think we've conceded like the most goals off of unnecessary giveaways of anybody this season. I thought that was a stat that I heard like given over the air or something. And if that's true, it wouldn't surprise me. So I think that's a fairly smart approach for Cologne in general, although I think at many times in this game, it actually almost undid them because we were fairly effective in maintaining that possession and keeping that pressure up at periods of time. Yeah, really good first 25, 30 minutes or so. And then what I talked about earlier in the match, which is the correct goal from this game is a couple corner kick set piece opportunities in the corner, yielding to that pretty poor play. What is Stambouli doing on the near post, Ethan, for that goal?
I mean, I think he's a sort of logical player you put on the post. So he's a defender, he's not that tall. You don't really want him marking anybody on the corner, but I feel like we might need to have some more training on set pieces, maybe in the coming weeks. I mean, I'm not professional, but you'd like to see like us not concede from every other set piece, maybe.
I would agree, and I think the other thing is when a team is playing as poorly offensively as Schalke is, set pieces are sometimes an opportunity for you to kind of like shithouse your way to result, here and there. Like if you're really strong on those, that can be a strength for you. We haven't been strong on them on the offensive end, and we certainly haven't been strong on them from a defensive standpoint. Christian Gross is a really experienced manager, and you would hope that he'd have some experience coaching that specific aspect of the game up and that we can see an improvement over that as we progress here into the Rückrunde, but no necessarily signs about that so far. Let's take a look at this comment real quick. Oh, that's basically what we were just saying. So there you go. Agreement from the chat here. I'm struggling to maintain an eye on the chat and listen to Ethan as we're both talking. Like I said, Richard certainly runs this a little bit better than I do. Anyway, as we go forward here. So 1-1 at halftime. I mean 1-0 at halftime, I should say. And then once again the happening in the second half. But I mean, it's really kind of a weird chance that falls to him, wasn't it?
I mean, weird's one way to put it. I would put fortuitous, maybe that's a good word. I mean, it's one of those goals where if you concede it, you sort of, throw the remote at the TV and you're done with the whole game, But when it happens for you, it's, of course it was deserved. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so that's 2 games in a row now where the goal that Matthew Hoppe scores is kind of suspect, but right place, right time, that kind of thing. We'll have to keep an eye on that going forward. But yeah, he scores again. He now has, I believe the tweet was today, and this actually was this Renee that tweeted this out. I forget if he's in the chat. But the stat that came out today, which is a stat that I'm of course going to be a huge fan of, was that young Matthew Hoppe has scored as many goals in 7 games as Franco De Santo scored in 71 for Schalke, which is, I mean, that's what I've been saying all along. There you go. Anyway, second half. Sustained pressure for a significant period of time. There was a period of time where like Cologne could not get out of their own half, and for some reason we just could not find the breakthrough goal to really pull away and ice this thing, and probably should have. I mean, you can point to certain moments in the match, but on the balance of play, like the amount of time that we had sustained pressure and couldn't find a way through. I mean, do you think that we should have gotten the 3 points out of this one?
Yeah, I mean, just look at the stats. You could probably say that we definitely deserved it. But the sort of build-up play is in my opinion, down the left-hand side, because of obviously the right-hand side, we can't use that at all. Don't ask me why. But down the left-hand side, we sort of build it up pretty nicely. The overlap for Harit and Kolasinac, I actually really like that. But we sort of get to that area around the top of the box, and and everything just kind of breaks down from there. I mean, the pitch doesn't help, but I mean, we saw like 3 or 4 instances where the ball was just sort of ricocheting around like it was pinball, at the top of Cologne's box. And, if you can't control the ball and, get it out to those wide areas into space, maybe. I mean, other than that, it just, we created some chances, honestly. There was a couple of times, I think you said it, that can we not get Serdar to not shoot every time he gets the ball?
Yeah.
But, I mean, it didn't. None of them really felt like they were high percentage chances, but just the accumulation of them, you sort of felt like one of them was going to spring up. That was going to be a great goal, but never happened.
And to clarify what I was trying to say about Serdar, basically, I mean, I'm on here a lot actually encouraging people to shoot because I feel like sometimes we're just a little bit too like hesitant and dancy around the edge of the box, and there's an opportunity.
That's exactly what I mean. Like, yeah. I wish we would just take more shots, honestly.
Yeah, I just felt like in this particular game, and sometimes he's just very quick to take a really poor opportunity, and sometimes there's an extra pass on that kind of thing. But I would certainly agree with you about the overlap on the left-hand side of the pitch. Part of the reason why maybe Harit hasn't worked out on the left-hand side as many times as we've seen it earlier in his time at Schalke is because we haven't had somebody like Kolasinac who can really bomb up the left-hand and side of the pitch on the overlap and draw the attention of both the right back and also some of those ball-sided midfielders, which actually softens up the middle a little bit and allows Harit to drift in and get into areas where he can really be dangerous. So that's been promising. Yeah, if we can find something down the right-hand side as well, that would be nice because that left-hand side is going to be pretty predictable to defend and for people. And I think we're probably going to have to open some things up and rely on some other players at certain points. But we do have something I did want to talk about in the chat here. Substitution. Christian Gross comes with a triple sub, 3 players all at once. No Bosdowan, no Katuchu involved in that, by the way. But Buyaleb, Ochipka, Mascarell. I personally did not like this substitution at all. And the reason for that is I don't find this to be a particularly beneficial substitution from an attacking perspective. And we're at the point of the season where draws don't do us anything anymore. earlier in the year where the gap was like a couple points, that may have been slightly different, but the gap is like multiple wins worth of points at this point. We need to get W's. So I don't care if we lose 2-1 to Cologne, but I want to do it, going absolutely like to the end, trying to score a goal and not putting on Mascarell, putting on Buyalev, putting on some of these guys, and then just totally killing our buildup. Did you see the sub the same way, or do you disagree with me on this?
I mean, I just feel like, Ochipka, I feel like, has to have a clause in his contract that he needs to be substituted into every game. It feels like he has to play every game, and now that we have Kolasinac, well, we have to sub on Ochipka. And, I feel like Bujalev is sort of maybe not of the quality that we kind of expect from a substitute player in the Bundesliga. I feel like he's sort of, and probably of no fault of his own, but he's sort of just been thrown in sort of when, Schalke really doesn't have the resources to really invest into any substitutes, maybe. But, although, Katuchu and Bostowan, as you say, maybe put those guys on, we've seen a little bit more creativity from them. Katuchu has had a couple of games where he's maybe, had that one chance where he creates it out of nothing, and suddenly, I think back to the cup against, I think that was Fortuna Dusseldorf last season, where he scored that great goal on his left foot. You kind of just want one of those goals from these kind of games.
Unfortunately, it was not to come. And then in stoppage time, not for the first time this season, when it looks like we're about to get a result, Cologne kind of on a counterattack here. Benjamin Stambouli, as he's wont to do, steps out to try to force something on the ball carrier. He disrupts the ball carrier, but he doesn't like win the ball in a way that actually allows Schalke to maintain possession. It goes out. I forget who it rolls to, but it falls right to another Cologne player. And then Thielmann, who was carrying the ball previously, runs directly into the space that Stambouli was occupying before he steps out, and is able to slot this one home for a absolute gut punch of a winner for Cologne, 2-1. I mean, Stuart Serdar, Mascarell, Kabak, I think deserve some criticism for their defensive contributions to this goal as well. But what did you make of the manner in which we let this one slip away from us?
Yeah, I mean, I saw some people saying basically that, Mascarell and Kabak got a little bit confused and started marking themselves. So I'd have to watch it back to make sure. But, that's never good when you have players marking your own teammates. But, it just felt like that's how the cookie crumbles with Schalke this season.
Yeah, I mean, definitely not a goal that's out of the ordinary in terms of how it came about, unfortunately. But there you go, a good opportunity for points against a club similarly at the bottom of the table, just absolutely wasted. And now we are officially at the halfway point of this season. I said on the podcast consistently over the first half here that I was going to stay positive until kind of the midpoint, and then we'll reevaluate. As it stands currently, Ethan, we are sitting in 18th place, tied on points with Mainz, 7 points of a possible 51 so far this season, and an 8-point gap to not even guaranteed safety, but to the relegation playoff spot, which Cologne currently occupies. How are you feeling about things right now? And at this point, what are you expecting from the rest of the season?
Yeah, I mean, the so-called safety point is like, what, 30 points? So I feel like, we're at 7 points now. So doubling our point total only gets us to 14. It feels like basically a miracle has to happen in order for us to get, outside of the bottom three. Something has to change, but at this point, I don't know what's going to change.
Yeah, I'm unfortunately kind of starting to feel that way as well. I forget who said this on Twitter earlier. It could be somebody in this chat actually, but I saw somebody say, part of the reason we were able to stay up last season is because of how well we started that season prior to the winter pause where everything fell apart. We're very much going to have a similar second half of the season to last year's Hinrunde if we're going to, find a way to escape relegation and pull something off. I mean, I do believe the talent is there in the squad. As poor of a squad as this is relative to previous seasons for us. Maybe I do think there's enough collective talent there to get it done, but there's very little reason to suggest that tactically, psychologically, whatever, the switch is going to flip and we're going to suddenly start winning games. So very much up against it now. Second half of the season is about to start, and unfortunately, that's the tough part of the schedule for us. We had some games recently, Bielefeld, Cologne. I mean, we had some teams that you would need to pick up points against, and now Sunday we're back to the Bayern Munich, Dortmund, Leipzig run of games here. The one positive note I would mention, Katuchu has scored against Bayern, so if there was a game to play the man, could be this one, but there is a different striker that we need to talk about, possibly being involved in the Bayern game and also for the rest of the season, and that is because we have witnessed the return of club legend Klaas-Jan Huntelaar from Ajax. When did that move first pop onto your radar from like a rumor perspective, Ethan?
I think that was towards the beginning of January, where there was sort of murmurs that some former Schalke players might come back and sort of help out the cause. And I mean, we saw that with Kolasinac. That was the fourth story I think that officially went through. I feel like for Huntelaar to come back, obviously he said that basically it was up to him as far as Ajax were concerned. And giving him a free transfer so that Schalke doesn't have to pay any transfer fee, that with the financial state that the club is in, that's a big help for sure. But Huntelaar, I feel like if you use him in the role that he was at Ajax, where he scored 7 goals from 11 appearances in the Eredivisie, with only like 360 something minutes, I think, just off the top of my head. If we can have that sort of production where you sort of just throw him on for the last 20-30 minutes, sort of get the ball into an area. I mean, I remember a couple of times where we had the ball flash across the 6-yard box and there was just nobody running there. So you feel like, if Huntelaar, who might not have the physicality as a 37-year-old to sort of start the match, against tired legs, against tired defenders, just that willing, like the knowledge that he's gained over the years of knowing where to be when, I feel like that could be the whole difference, honestly.
So that's interesting though, because I do feel there's some people that are actually expecting him to be in the starting 11 like from the get-go. You think he's going to be very much in sort of more of like an Ibisevic role where you bring him on like later in matches. Is that how you expect him to be used?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he's 37, and especially against Bayern, you would want more youthful strikers, especially with how Bayern play their like aggressive high line. I don't feel like Huntelaar sort of fits that game. And there might be times where you see a team.
Where's Robbie Matondo at these days? We need to,
go recall him from loan maybe. But we'll see. I mean, for Huntelaar, this game against Cologne, I think it was begging for him. It's unfortunate that he missed out for injury, but those games where the team's sitting back and you just need somebody to get onto a ball. I feel like that's going to be the role he plays.
Yeah, could not agree more. And I mean, this is what I'll say about it. Like, even if this move isn't like the most impactful from like a sporting perspective, it makes at least as much sense as the Ibisevic signing, and if not much more because of his history with the club and everything that you can say about that. So I agree with you. I hope it's a positive move, and I hope that he can actually contribute later in matches. The problem is just that like so many times by the time later in matches arrives, the match is already gone, right? And so, like, what's the point of really bringing in Huntelaar to affect things if by the time he gets on the pitch, the game's kind of already lost? So that'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. But certainly speaks to the sense that people like you and I are not crazy for supporting this club and caring about it as much as we do, because, former players who are, arguably in better situations are willing to come back and put themselves in this situation voluntarily to try to help the club stay up. And I think that speaks volumes about what this means to a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure.
So there you go. Tough road ahead. Don't exactly know how the second half of the season is going to go. And certainly based on the opponents, not optimistic for the next run of games. But, if we did it against Hoffenheim, maybe we can grab a result here and there. And if we stack enough of those up at random moments in the second half of the season, we might find a way to squeak it out. We will wait and see. But I think for now, I'm going to leave it there unless there's anything else that you want to hit before we dip out of here.
I feel like one thing I need to touch on, just as I thought about this earlier. How DeSanto and Hoppe were on the same goal total right now. So, maybe we'll see Hoppe turn up with a goal against Bayern, just like DeSanto did. That'd be the dream, wouldn't it?
Hey, and I will say what I would have said for DeSanto too. I will applaud any goal that man scores anytime. I want him to score. He just wasn't doing it enough. So if Hoppe can score against Bayern, I will love that. And I'm sure some percentage of the Schalke fan base, wherever they are, will groan at the American continuing this streak. But
we'll never know who exactly.
Yeah, don't know who that would be. But hey, but like I said, we'll take the goals wherever we can get them. So we'll leave it there. But yeah, Ethan, you want to tell the people where they can find you, even though it's there on the screen?
Yeah, just follow me on Twitter at Tedesco Time. I tweet absolute garbage, but it's funny sometimes, so you probably should follow.
There it is. Funny sometimes. You heard it from the man himself. I am Jack Mangan. You can find me at JMMangan, JMMangan on Twitter. Significantly less entertaining than this man on the old Twitter machine. And of course, subscribe to the US newsletter, all that good stuff. SchalkeMerica on Twitter. Until the next pod comes, stay ready, my friends, and we will see you later.